Thank you for joining this session. The very purpose of conducting a session of this sort is to provide you with sufficient information as to how you can apply for these countries, Sweden and Finland mainly, when it comes to applying for postgraduate education. We'll cover a bit about the bachelor's application process as well, because I understand some of you may have intentions of applying for your bachelor's. So to inform you a bit about us, I understand most of you may have came through our social media pages. So to explain a bit about us, we are among the first couple of firms in Sri Lanka to initiate recruiting Sri Lankan students to study in Sweden and Finland. About 14 years back, we started in 2010, and at the time, we were among the first couple of firms in Sri Lanka to do that. And when it comes to Finland, which is quite a popular option now, when we started processing applications for Finland, we were the first in business for sure, because no one else was doing it at that time. And we are happy to see it has been evolved from less than 10 students a year to now few thousand students trying to go there every year. We have seen the transformation firsthand over the last 14 years. And we have about over 1 billion rupees worth of scholarship under our belt. That is something we've been able to acquire throughout this 14 years time. And when we first started anyways, Finland used to have an absolute free education system until the year 2019. But the surprising fact is that even in the year of 2019, I think the number of students who chose Finland for their studies were below 50. Surprisingly, after the introduction of tuition fees, now these options have become kind of mainstream ones. And over the years, we have processed around uh, definitely over 2,000 applicants now, because this PowerPoint presentation is about 4 or 5 years old now. So we have processed about 2,000 plus Sri Lankans. The main applicants, co-applicants, children, everyone added together, more than that over the last 14 years. So we are pretty comfortable with the process. Yes, we may have our own flaws, but I think personally, as a firm, we certainly can add some value to your application. But end of the day, I don't really see the necessity of using any kind of an agent or a representative or third party person with your application. But still, if you're, employed full time and do not want to learn about all these processes from the scratch, you're more than welcome to use our services where we can process the applications and handle the visa process on behalf of you. So I'll quickly move to the presentation, the actual presentation. As a repetition of what I explained before, we have been running this for the last 14 years. One of the first couple of firms to promote education in Sweden, certainly the first to promote education in Finland. We have 2,000 plus numbers of applicants who have gone to these countries to us over the last 14 years, a reasonable number of scholarships. And the most important thing is the last one. The very reason why we are conducting these information sessions months before the actual application period is because we have a process of processing 50 to 60 maximum number of applicants a year. So the reason why we do that is, yes, we are as a business happy to process thousands of applicants if that's possible. But unfortunately, these countries have very short application periods. So regardless of the numbers we recruit, there's always a limit to the actual number of applications we can handle during that short time period efficiently, which is why our services are limited to about 50 to 60 maximum every year. That is the reason why we are conducting these information sessions in advance, so you can familiarize with the process, fulfill all the requirements. And if you're planning on applying through us, you can quickly sign up with us and initiate the process. So I received a message. I'll give you guys some time um, about questions and answers. And Travis is asking a question is if this is only for Sweden and Finland and also for Norway. I'll quickly add that it's pretty much the same process, the same requirements. And but there are some circumstances we have to consider when applying for countries like Norway. I can explain that, no worries. So if I quickly initiate the discussion, the first slide is about the entry requirements you need to have in applying for scholarships. The general idea is if you are planning on applying for a master's, you need to have a bachelor's degree with a class or a higher GPA at least, let's say a GPA of at least 2.7 plus, in order to be able to have, in order to be able to increase your chances to secure a scholarship of some kind. The second requirement is the English proficiency requirement. There are some provisions in these countries. For an example, if you think about Sweden, they have a provision if you have passed your general English as a subject during A levels, you don't need any kind of an English proficiency test score as of now. But for all other countries, you need to have kind of an IELTS score. The general requirement is 6.5 with 6 for each component. And if you're planning on taking up PTE, the requirement then is to have 62 overall with no component less than 59. So you have time till end of October if you apply through us to fulfill this English proficiency requirement. And if you have passed your general English as a subject already, you can initiate the process with Sweden and later on submit your IELTS or PT score. So we can add other options such as Finland. The answer to Travis' question is if you are an individual applicant, let's say you are single, you don't have any partner, you are planning on applying on your own, then we also can add some options such as Norway and Estonia, um, and apply for more programs as much as possible. That will increase your chances of getting into a scholarship of some kind. But we only add Norway and Estonia for individual applicants. For those who are married, your options are limited to Sweden and Finland because both these countries are very family friendly with regard to their policies. So it's fairly easy for a married person to secure a resident permit for the entire family and to go together at the same time in most cases. So the third requirement or the third fact is you have to be able to pay a tuition fee and study. No, we don't handle any processes or any applications for Germany. Thank you guys. Anyway, I'll give you some separate time for questions and answers because that way we can, have a more structured conversation. So the third requirement is to have, be able to pay a tuition fee in case if you have to pay a tuition fee. The idea is there's some risks involved in considering these countries. The major risk is, let's say for an example, Sweden requires you to pay for the first semester. That's the requirement. But if anyone is of the opinion that, okay, I'll pay for the first semester anyhow, I'll go there and then I'll start working there to pay for the second semester, the chances of him or her getting stuck in Sweden without being able to pay tuition fees is very high. The reason is it's difficult sometimes for you to find that first employment opportunity in a short time period. It can sometimes take up to 3, 4, 5 months. So if you're planning on choosing these countries, you have to be able to pay your tuition fees at least for the entire first year. Even if you pay for the first semester, you still have to have a budget set aside for the second semester by the time you leave Sri Lanka. And the other point is about GMAT. This is again not applicable to everyone, but if you have completed any bachelor's degree in the field of business, can be business administration or marketing or sales or accountancy or any of these business related bachelors, by completing the test GMAT, you increase your chances of getting into a scholarship. The reason is if you think about some of the Finnish universities, namely University of Oulu and Aalto University, and even some of the Swedish universities, such as Stockholm University, Uppsala, or Gothenburg, all these universities, they have a separate selection group for applicants with a GMAT score. So the ratio works in a way, if let's say if 500 Sri Lankans are applying with a bachelor's and some kind of an English proficiency score related to business in these countries, only about 5 will have the bachelor's IELTS, OPT score, and the GMAT score. So these
Mhm.
five will be processed first
Genau.
before the others will be considered.
Genau.
So that is the idea. And that is why you need to work on GMAT, especially if you have a first class or second level. I highly recommend you to take up GMAT. But again, this is applicable only for those with bachelor's in the field of business or something related to business. The last one is pretty much common sense. You have to be able to pay remaining tuition fees if you are admitted for a partial scholarship. Let's say uh, if you've been admitted for a 50% fee waiver, you're still expected to be able to, uh, you know, pay whatever remaining tuition fees. So, as I explained before, I'll give you separate time period for your questions. So please refrain from asking any question at this stage. I appreciate it. So I'll quickly move to the next slide. It's about the disadvantages of these countries. The biggest disadvantage we see is the fact that all these countries have their own languages. So in the short run, it will be difficult for you to find any kind of employment without being able to speak the local language. So that's the very reason why I advise you to prepare for some time to go on your own. For an example, if you're planning on moving to any of these countries, I recommend you to have sufficient funds for at least for 6 months, because that's kind of give you a room to find that first income opportunity. The second one is also it's not something you can change. They have harsh climate throughout the year, so you have to be able to adapt to that. And the third one is no longer applicable, but in the very beginning of our business, about 10, 14 years back, I always came across these kind of complaints when someone go into these countries. Some of them, not everyone. I received complaints along the lines of Chamaka, I'm the only person of my color in this township. I feel kind of uncomfortable. But that course kind of go away with time, so they definitely get adapted. But with today's number of Sri Lankans we have in these countries, I think this is no longer applicable, because even the most remote Swedish university or the most remote Finnish university will have at least 15, 20 Sri Lankan students studying at any given time. So I think there's some kind of what's who have joined our session today is a bit weird. So, anyways, the last point is difficulties with regard to finding employment. It's pretty common. There's nothing you can do about it. The best way to address this is to be able to, talk to, be able to talk to your friends or family if you have anyone living there, get to know about the real situation, and you also can set aside some funds to cover up your living expenses for the first few months. So that way it'll keep you safe. And now, since we already talked about disadvantages, I would like to express my thoughts about the advantages of studying in these countries. The biggest one I see is the fact that they have plenty of scholarship options. As I explained before, when we started promoting these countries back in 2010, even Sweden used to have an absolute free education system. Um, Back then, I had some friends who had their bachelor's completed at local universities in Sri Lanka. They had the opportunity to study in Sweden without paying a single rupee or single corner 14 years back. They introduced their tuition fees in 2011. Same for Finland. Finland used to have an absolute free system until 2019, 6 years back, about 5 years back. And still, because of the fact that all these countries at some point of time have had free education systems, they still try their level best to at least allow you a kind of a partial scholarship as much as possible, especially countries like Finland. Same for Norway, in case if you are planning on applying. Norway introduced their fees for the first time last year, 2023. And same for Estonia as well. If I'm not mistaken, they introduced their fees around the same time as Finland, 2019 or 2010, 2020. So the whole point is they still have plenty of scholarship opportunities. especially if you have a higher or GPA or a CAST for your bachelor's, you stand a higher probability to be able to secure a scholarship of some kind. The second biggest advantage I see is the fact that there are plenty of social security benefits. Some of the times people abuse them. Like, for an example, I've heard in recent times in Finland, instead of trying to find employment, some of these recent arrivals try to take advantage of their system and receive unemployment benefits, which is very unfortunate, but still is possible in these countries. I don't think it'll be possible anywhere else in the world. So you have access to healthcare, especially in the event of hospitalization. You have access to certain childcare benefits. For an example, whatever you pay is exactly similar as of a Swedish or Finnish citizen. You also have the ability to apply for a work permit, even with an entry-level kind of a job offer. But the whole point is, in Sweden, they used to have a minimum wage requirement years back, but now they have changed it to a kind of a mid-level salary threshold. So not everyone will be able to make it. But if you come from a science and technology background or health kind of background, if you are confident about your competencies to find job in a first world country, still it's possible. And Finland, for some reason, they're still having a salary threshold around the bottom level salary. So you can still uh, find a job offer as long as it meets the minimum salary requirement. You can still be granted a work permit. So that's one of the biggest advantages I see in these countries. And also, I talk about this already. You have accessible healthcare facilities, free education for your children, including state-funded daycare facilities, which is again a rare occurrence. And you also have the ability to study all vocational training in local language. Like the idea is, if you learn the Swedish language, acquire a certain level of fluency, or if you learn the Finnish language and acquire a certain level of fluency, all vocational training programs available in these countries are offered free of charge. So if you work according to a plan, I think anyone can make it in these countries still, at least as of the time we speak. And also the last point is, because of all these reasons, it is it's very evident that both of these countries, generally all Scandinavian countries, have some kind of inclusive systems in place to absorb the recent immigrants. So if I quickly move to the next one, uh, move to the next uh, well, I'll have to unfortunately remove some individuals because it's happened for the first time. I should not publish um, the Zoom links online again. I learned my lesson. So I would like to talk about things to be concerned of. Number one is, you must either be on a scholarship or have the ability to pay for at least the first 2 semesters or for the first year. The reason is, I don't think you can immediately find a job in these countries, so it can take some time for you to find a job. Because of that reason, you have to be able to set aside some amount of funds to be able to cover at least the first 2 semesters. The second one is to have sufficient living expenses for the first 6 months on the minimum. For a family of three or more, I recommend you to have a minimum of 1.8 million. Whereas if you're an individual applicant, you need to have at least 1.5 million set aside to cover up your living expenses for the first 6 months on the minimum. And then you also should have the willingness to learn the local language and to make local contacts, because when you are familiar with the local language, it's fairly easy for you to settle down in these countries in the long term. And the other point also, I talk about it. You don't have to wait till you complete your education. If your spouse is skilled enough, he or she can continue to look for full-time employment opportunities. And upon landing a contract, he or she can again apply for a work permit. In which case, your tuition fee status will also change to free education. I've seen people doing that, and it's possible in these countries. And the final one is a mere request. I recommend everyone to complete your studies, even if you find a job offer. before you discontinue or before you defer your studies for something else. The idea is your overall behavior in these countries as Sri Lankans have a direct impact on those who want to follow you later on. It's very, very evident. When you first started, we had no refusal whatsoever for the first 6 years straight. And then we received our first refusal from Sweden. For Finland, it's still a very good number. I think we only had about one refusal, and that too was in 2017. But having said that, we are not able, we are not able to guarantee you anything. But my point is, it's very evident over the years as the numbers grow, continues to grow, the number of refusals also have been increased. It's a fact. But still, I think you have a fair chance in these countries if you have all the basic requirements met. So I'll quickly move to the next slide. It's about how the application process will look like if you decide to apply through Eduzone. The first step is we conduct some sort of a formal assessment for which we need you to submit your degree cert, transcript, and passport copy, along with our assessment application, which is something I can send you later on. And we also charge about 35,000 Sri Lankan rupees at the time of assessment, which is charged as more of a commitment fee. So we can spend about a week or two on our process and identify what we can apply with a higher kind of a probability to be able to get into one of these universities. Then we can list down all possible options, all the cost contents, and all exact documents we need from UN to process you further. The second step is then to pick your options from our list, and then you can, kind of pick the options from the list we give you, and then apply for about 4 different options from Sweden and 4 different options from Finland. And at the same time, if you are an individual applicant, we also can add options like Norway and Estonia without any extra cost. And the other point is, in case if you are married and your spouse is also equally qualified with a bachelor's, we can add her or him as well at no extra cost. We do that intentionally. The reason is instead of applying for 8 different masters, now you can apply for 16 different masters, which increases the chances or probability you have to be able to land a scholarship of some kind. We don't charge anything extra, even if the two of you decide to apply together. So it's up to you. If both of you are equally qualified, you can absolutely do that. The idea is you pick your options from our list given after the assessment outcome, submit your documents, and we also charge about 185,000 rupees at that stage. And we are liable to secure an offer for one of the options you pick during the assessment stage. And if you apply on time between mid-March to mid-April next year, we can have all these admission decisions. And then pick the best one and move to the visa process. So the visa process, again, it's kind of different from one country to another, but Sweden and Finland, both, they have identical visa systems. In both cases, you apply online and then you have to visit the embassy in New Delhi at some point of time to prove your, identify yourself. They will take your biometrics. They will ask you some questions if applicable, and then you can come back and wait for the decision to be made. You don't have to go to India twice because both these countries again have organized systems. They send their resident permit cards to Sri Lanka. The Swedish embassy send it to the local honorary consul, whereas the Finnish embassy send their permit cards to the VFS application center in Colombo. But still, at some point of time, you have to go to New Delhi during this process. And also, if you apply for Norway, you can get it done completely without leaving Sri Lanka. But if you happen to secure an admission from Estonia and want to apply for a visa, they still have a very old school kind of a process. You have to visit New Delhi, lodge your application, wait till it's granted, and come back with a visa endorsed on your passport. But then again, Norway and Estonia, in our case, is applicable only for individual applicants. So I would quickly move forward. So it's a bit of an explanation about the assessment process. I already explained this. It works in a way we need some documents from your side, basically your bachelor's degree, the transcript and passport, along with our assessment application, which we can send after this session, and our assessment fee, which is 35,000. Once you hand over everything in a week or two, we can get back to you with the outcome. We can explain you the kind of options you'll have to apply with an increased probability. Then from our list of options, you can pick your 4 options from Sweden, 4 from Finland. And if you happen to be an individual applicant, you also can add about 2 different options from Norway and 2 from Estonia and submit all your documents during the actual application process. So during the actual process, it's all about picking your options from the assessment outcome and submitting your documents along with our application fee, which is 185,000 rupees. I understand it's quite a lot of money, but then again, as I said before, we only accept 50 applicants. So in order to focus on a small number of applicants, to make it viable for us, we still had to charge you around that amount of money, but it will cover all application fees involved. So the third step is the visa process. As I explained, all these countries, they have their own processes, but Sweden and Finland have kind of identical visa process because it's electronic. You apply online, upload your documents online, upload your explanations online, pay your visa fee online, and then you had to visit the embassy in question or embassy, the appropriate embassy at one point of time during that process. So I'll quickly talk about the costs involved in this process. We have the assessment fee, which is 35,000 rupees, an actual application fee of 185,000 rupees, and the visa fee. With the visa fee is again different from one country to another. I'll start with Sweden. The average Swedish application fee is 1,500 Swedish kroners for an adult applicant and half of that for a child. The idea is you now pay about 45,000, somewhere around that figure, as an individual applicant or an adult applicant, and half of that, maybe around 22,500 rupees for a child. In Finland, the actual application fee is 350 euros for the main applicant, comes about 110,000. Then 470 euros for the co-applicant or spouse, which is on average about 140 or 150,000. And then you pay 240 euros for a child, which comes to about, again, 80,000. Yes, the visa fee is expensive, but then again, Finland is, if you are selected for Finland, you're likely to have some kind of a scholarship as well. And when it comes to Norway, their visa fee is around, what I can recall is around 111,657 Norwegian kroners. I think it's around, I'm not sure. Not that. That's not the visa fee. The visa fee I can recall is of 5,500. I know. Okay, that comes to about 150, 160,000. And the requirement for Norway is if you are to apply for a student visa, they want you to have sufficient funds for the first year's worth of living expenses. The idea is they estimate you to have some kind of money in hand. Usually it's 111,657 as far as I can recall it. These figures may have changed now. So the idea is you have to deposit these funds. It's around 4 million, somewhere around 4 million figure. You have to deposit these funds in your university's bank account, and then they will issue you a fund deposit certificate, which is something you have to use for your visa process. For Sweden and Finland, you can show funds locally. The idea is I recommend you to have 15,000 euros in a bank account. That's roughly a 4.5 to 5 million rupees if you are an individual applicant. If you're a family of two, I recommend you to have at least 20,000 euros, which comes to about 8 to 8.5 million rupees. If you're a family of three, at 10,000 euros more. So you get a figure of about 10 to 10.5 million. And if you're a family of four, I recommend you to have about 12 to 12.5 million. These are not the exact figures. These figures are made of the actual figure plus some kind of a buffer. So this is what you should keep in mind about, 4 to 4.5 million for an individual, about 8 to 8.5 for a family of two, about 10 to 10.5 for a family of three, and about 12 to 12.5 for a family of four. If you have more children, then you have to add about extra at least 8,000 euros, which comes to about 3 million per each child, each additional child. So the idea is, you have to be able to pay these amounts. And when you prepare your initial budget, you have to consider these figures as well. And then I'll talk about air tickets. The idea is if you want to apply for any of these countries, except Norway, in all other cases, you have to plan for two different types of air ticket. You have to think about the actual cost it'll you have to pay to go to New Delhi, as well as the actual cost you have to bear to go to the major destination. So nowadays, a return ticket to New Delhi will cost you about 100,000. And if I'm not mistaken, an actual air ticket from Colombo to any of these European destinations will cost you at least around 250,000. So that is a part of your expenses you have to think about. And the last one is other expenses. For example, if you visit the Embassy of Finland in New Delhi, you may have to have some of your documents legalized. For that, you may have to pay around 15, 20,000 Sri Lankan rupees. You also have to think about expenses like whatever it will cost you to stay at a hotel in these countries, things like that, and also your accommodation. But then I have given you some kind of a budget. Um, Remember, we talk about the necessity to have at least 1.8 million for a family of two for the first 6 months. That will cover your living expenses. So it's not a very like a high budget, but it's a minimal budget, and you can still live within that kind of a budget in this country. It's still possible. So I'll quickly move forward. I understand most of us as immigrants, we need to, when we, although our primary intention is to go for some kind of higher studies, we all want to apply for permanent residency in these countries and maybe eventually become a citizen. So there's two major ways you can do it. One is to obviously apply for a work permit. You as the main applicant or your spouse, if one of you can find a job offer during the time you live in these countries and apply for a work permit, in about 45 months on a work permit, you can apply for loan stay visa, which is equivalent to permanent residency. But my preferred most method is the second one. Since you're going for your master's, this is anyways the most competitive option. But if you can secure an offer to complete a PhD in these countries, the wonderful thing about completing a PhD is all PhDs are considered as equivalent to employment. You still get a work permit, which means you automatically fulfill that residential requirement for your permanent residence, your loan stay visa. So you have both of these pathways. Either the husband or wife, one of the two can find a job offer during the study time period or the post-study time period, apply for a work permit, and in 45 months, you can apply for some kind of a loan stay visa. That's one option. The second one is you can try your level best to secure an admission for a PhD, complete it, and by the time of completion, you will have that 4-year requirement met. You're likely to be able to meet that requirement. So these are the two key options. And apart from this, you also have some options such as setting up a business and things like that. I'm not going to talk about it because honestly, even I don't know much about that process, but I know apart from these two options, you also have some other options like setting up a business. Like, for an example, in Sweden, it's possible for you to set up a business. If you run it for 2 years, they have set certain thresholds, something you can conduct your own research on. So if you meet these thresholds, you can apply for permanent residency right away. And the last one, obviously, if you are single, you also have the possibility, I would say, to apply for a partner visa, especially if you happen to build up a relationship. So it's completely out of my scope. So these are the key options you have to settle down. So I would like to take in any questions you may have. Uh, what you can do is you can either verbally ask your questions. Just raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and I'll allow you to ask it because As you can see, there are some bots, you know, join us as well. So I'll give you some time. Any questions, guys? You can either send it in the chat box, or else if you want to ask it verbally, you can ask that as well verbally. So Supun asks, any opportunities of research masters? Anyway, Supun, all these masters I talk about, often 2 years in length. The first year is entirely coursework based, and the second year is entirely research based. That's how these masters are made of in Nordic countries. 120 credits, 2 years, year of research, and year of coursework. And there's no MPs in these countries. The title is mostly a Commonwealth one. I come across this question most of the times. The idea of MPL is it's mostly a Commonwealth title. You don't have, I don't, I rarely see any MPLs in any of these European countries. They don't have the concept of Master of Philosophy. And PhDs, obviously, you can apply, but again, we as a third party cannot have any involvement in the PhD application process. If that is the case, I recommend you to look for the employment sections of these websites, and each and every website will contain some information related to ongoing studentships. So, but if you want to apply for a master's, that's something we can help you with. So we have some questions. Kalpi has a question. Will I be able to follow a nursing bachelor in Finland without any nursing background in Sri Lanka? Yes, Kalpi, you can. But then again, our primary focus, at least since the last 4 5 years, is to process applicants for masters. But still, if you want to apply for a bachelor's, you can go through us. But then again, we don't apply for Finland alone. The idea is if you apply for Finland, there's a competitive entrance test. You have to pass it in order to secure an admission. It's applicable again only for bachelor's level programs. For masters, there's no such tests. So if you want to go through us, for example, if you want to apply for nursing, if you have completed advanced level bio subjects in advanced levels, we can apply for Sweden and Finland simultaneously, and you can sit for the entrance test in Finland. If you get through the test, you can then apply for a visa. And I also have seen some official agents appointed by some of the Finnish universities for bachelors. So I think you may have better chances there. That's my honest opinion, because our primary focus is always masters. We can still apply for bachelors, but as I said again, your selection process is subjected to an entrance test. So that's not something we can control. Dehara says it's difficult to find part-time work during studies. Well, Dehara, my opinion is it has been difficult in these European countries as far as I can remember. That's pretty normal. That's why I asked you or requested everyone to have sufficient budget, at least for the first 6 months, because all these countries have their own languages. If you move to Austria or Belgium or Germany or Sweden or Finland or even Italy, regardless of the country, it's always been that way. So it takes some time for you to find that first income opportunity. But if you think about the long-term potential, these countries are highly unlikely to change their policies from like to take 180-degree turn to come to like a complete opposite situation like some of the mainstream countries. So in the long term, these are very sustainable options. But in the short term, you have to set aside some funds to cover up your living expenses, at least for the first 6 months. Malka says duration taken after the application process for acceptance. Well, Malka, we're currently accepting applications for next autumn, next August. If you apply on time, around mid-March to mid-April next year, you can have all the admission decisions and start the visa process. Nasi says, are you guys doing consultancy for education, or is there any way to secure work visa kind of apply? Not at all, Nasi. We've been, keeping our head above the water by doing what we can. Employment is unfortunately is not something we can help you with. But I can give you an advice there. If you are skilled enough, The easiest way to secure employment in a foreign country is to apply directly, as much as possible. Apply for but again, you have to be realistic about it. Like for an example, if you come from the software industry or engineering backgrounds or even healthcare backgrounds, check against the regulatory requirements in these foreign countries, identify the job opportunities, apply for multiple options, always adhere to the CV requirements of those countries, and you will have a fair chance. So for those who want to look for employment overseas, that's the best advice I can give you. So, and then Kalpi says, if we collect funds through mortgage, will it be acceptable for show money? Well, Kalpi, that's not something I can advise you on. The reason is you are taking a huge risk if you mortgage your house. Imagine you go into any of these, it's not about Sweden or Finland, going to any of these countries. For some reason, you end up coming back, you'll have a hard time paying off your mortgage. So I cannot really advise on personal finances. If I were you, I would not do that. But then again, these countries are pretty flexible about the financial requirements. So I cannot really advise on a public forum. But if you can somehow get hold of these funds, you can still apply for a visa without any issue. Niroshan says how we can meet you to start the process. Yes, Niroshan, I can leave my number. That's the next slide anyway. So I'll give you our contact numbers so you can approach us after this. Dastini says, I've completed my degree in fashion design and production department, then I need to do my master's degree, master's in fashion design and fashion marketing. Can I know if it's difficult to do a master's in fashion design in Finland? Well, Dastini, if you started the conversation from the very beginning, our process works in a way we apply for multiple options altogether. We don't apply for Finland alone. The idea is they only have 9 research units, limited number of programs, so there's no way we can assure anyone a placement. The best way to do that is we can add multiple options, at least Sweden and Finland together, apply for up to 8 masters, and then you stand a chance. Yes, you have fashion design in both countries, but not many options. There's a university called University of Borås in Sweden, and Borås is known to be a textile town, and they have some excellent fashion-related options. And then in Finland as well, if I'm not mistaken, there's 1 or 2 options, but that's all you have in Sweden and Finland. So if you are open to apply for other options, like for an example, let's say industrial management or something you can, product and process management, or even business management or marketing, or somewhere along that lines, we can certainly help you out. But if you want to stick to fashion, unfortunately, I don't think we have that many options in these countries. So I quickly move to the next one. No, that's all we have as questions. Anything else?
Chamaka, Amila is here.
Yeah, go ahead, Miss Amelie.
Can you hear? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there any possibility to get all the available list of the universities or whatever the courses that are available with you before we start the process?
Yeah, what I can do is I'm going to anyhow send our assessment instructions after this session, hopefully by tomorrow morning, where I can send you some links to find out all available options in these countries. But if you want to be more
All right.
specific, we can do that after formal assessment because it depends on your credentials. So it's not something we can confirm right away. But I can send you some information where you can find out all English medium programs available in these countries. Will do.
Okay, bro. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So Halpi again says in Finland, if you select a rural area university, it will be difficult to survive. Not at all. It's a very weird situation. I have even had plenty of arguments with my clients especially during the last 2 3 years when Finland became so popular. Your intention should always be to get into these countries. That's the first and foremost thing. It's pretty simple. These are not commercialized educational systems. If you think about Finland, there's only 9 research universities. And all of these universities have set a fixed number of students they can accommodate. If you think about, let's say, the program A at University of Helsinki, they may accommodate about 25 Sri Lankans. That's it. So although all Sri Lankans want to get into Helsinki, it's not going to happen. So what you have to do is you have to always focus on securing a scholarship of some kind. Whether it's rural or urban, it doesn't matter. That's just my opinion anyway. Anyone can have a different argument, which I respect. But your primary concern should be to manage your finances within the first 2 year time duration, get into a good university, probably a research university. We don't work or we don't process applicants for these other kind of universities which used to be core polytechnics some time back. I'm not condemning or anything, but our services are limited to research universities. The idea is that way we can keep this sustainable. We can ensure we recruit a, smart or, I can't use the word smart. It's more like a sustainable crowd who share similar interests and similar intentions. So when we pick these options, when you apply for multiple options, if you think about these 9 research units, only 2 are located in Helsinki itself, University of Helsinki and Aalto University. Every other university is located in other towns. So the location doesn't matter, but you should have some kind of a scholarship and you should have some kind of a budget. These two are our primary concerns. And the interesting most part is, as I explained to someone, these masters will contain a year of research and a year of coursework. And it's all about surviving this coursework component. 60 credits, 1 year, you survive. If you want to move to a bigger city, you can do so later on because there's no compulsory attendance requirements for the most programs. It's all about getting selected into a research university. And to do that, there's no way you can stick to urban areas in Finland if you are planning on applying for research universities because there's only 9 of them. And apart from 2 options, all other universities are located outside of Helsinki. It's a fact. Um, Tiran says, are there any specific requirements for selecting a scholarship in Finland? And I guys guide you to do that. Yeah, the general requirement, Tiran, is you have to have some kind of a higher GPA and an English proficiency test score of at least 6.5 is 6 for each component. That's the general idea. Anyway, I'm going to publish this conversation hopefully by tomorrow afternoon. So you can watch out for this. And if you missed any part of the conversation, you can go back and watch it. General requirement is to have a higher GPA and some kind of an English proficiency test score. Marcus says, what if the spouse is focusing on getting a work permit and is a qualified professional? Rural areas might have less job opportunities for qualified professional. Have you had this problem with previous customers? Never ever, because we're very informative about our customers. They also understand us. The idea is you don't have to focus on applying for jobs in rural areas. If you are a skillful person, your job search can be widened to the entire country, Finland or Sweden. You find a job offer, apply for a work permit. If you want to move away, it's entirely up to you. But my advice is to at least complete that coursework component, and then the student can join the spouse if they want to, especially if you don't have kids, it's perfectly possible. Because I understand the primary concern is to secure residency or long stay residency. It can be done in these countries. But to be able to do that, you have to firstly get into these countries. And that's where this rural or urban argument comes in. So if you go through us, we strongly believe in sustainability. It is a fact that not everyone from Sri Lanka can go to Helsinki or Stockholm, not going to happen. So we have to accept that and then apply for options that are available to us. And having said that, we have plenty of established professionals living in all the areas of Sweden and Finland. I spoke to one of my previous clients. I can even name him because I know he won't judge. His name is Udita Andrade. He went to Sweden some time back, I think 2 years back, on a fully funded Swedish Institute scholarship. sent me a message recently saying the Swedish government has allocated millions of funds to develop the northern Sweden region. And he was advising me to send more engineers and anyone with these technical backgrounds to that area because they have opportunities, upcoming opportunities in these countries. Anyway, I'm an immigrant myself. I'm now an Australian citizen. Uh, I don't like the idea of moving to bigger cities. Just my personal opinion. I think I have it in me. So I just want to share it with you guys. I don't really worry much about the location. I worry about the ability to survive and the ability to get into that country in the first place. That's just my opinion, anyways. My advice is if you have a scholarship of some kind and sufficient funds for 6 months at least, and the ability to get on the street, talk to people, and have some kind of personal approach and say, look, I came from this country, I'm studying in this university, I have full work rights. Do you have anything available? It'll work. It tends to work. But if you stick to staying in the room and apply for plenty of opportunities online, it'll be difficult to find any kind of these entry level job offers. But anyway, this applies only for entry level kind of offers. If you want to apply for professional jobs, again, you're highly unlikely to find one by approaching companies. But if you want to kind of grab some kind of an entry level job offer to be able to pay for your rent, to be able to fund whatever remaining fees, the best way is to get on the street, talk to individuals. Since you have full work rights, it's always about the approach. Imagine you work in Sri Lanka, you run your own restaurant, and if someone from Bangladesh comes to you and talk about his experience back in Bangladesh, working at a restaurant, if he's visually pleasing, if you have some kind of confidence, okay, this guy can do a good job for me, you will end up hiring him. But if he send you his CV online, I don't think you will pay that kind of an attention to that online CV because you receive similar requests, especially if you live in a country full of immigrants who receive hundreds of such requests on a daily basis. That's the idea. So Kalpi says for family of four, two adults and two kids, 20 lakhs for 6 months to survive. Will it be enough? Well, that's a reasonable minimal budget. It won't help you do many things, but especially that's another. Anyway, it's good you asked this question. There's always a huge difference of rental costs in a big city. When you think about a big city and a smaller city, I've seen individuals paying over 10, 12, 13,000 kroners to live in places like Stockholm, Uppsala, and even Gothenburg. Whereas I've seen my clients paying around 4,000, 4,500, 5,000 kroners to live in other areas like Umeå or Luleå, most of these so-called rural areas. The idea is once you find a job offer that pays you some kind of income, the amount of money you can earn in these countries is the same. Simply because you work in Stockholm, they don't pay you higher amount of income. It's not like it's the same in Finland or it's the same in most of these first world countries. So that's another reason why I prefer rural areas because the living cost is pretty much, at least in Sweden, is nowadays pretty much half of what you pay in a bigger city. So as I said earlier, it's all about surviving that coursework component of 1 year. So you can decide what's good for you. Do they have masters for those who have tourism and hospitality degree holders? Yes, Kalpi, you do have some options. How long do you have to stay in Finland to get PR? I think I already talked about it. The general idea is you have to be there on a work permit for 45 months. What are the most available entry-level jobs in Finland? Mostly our clients, some of them, they find professional jobs right away, especially those who come from the software industry or some of the engineering backgrounds. But many of them work in the hospitality industries, or maybe in the cleaning industries, places like that, and then gradually build their way up the ladder. Well, that's all I have as questions. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me, or else I'll quickly move to the next slide. Someone asked me for our contact details, so you can call Ravish on this number 0762 803 838, or WhatsApp me on this number 0715 607 333. It's entirely up to you. You can use one of the methods, but in case if we don't answer, please leave us a message with your requirement and we'll ensure we call you back. Because if you notice it, this is the biggest complaint against us. Because we receive every year, especially during this time of the year, we have like, oh, you had terrible customer service. Oh, you don't answer your calls, all that. The honest reason is that since we only handle 50 to 60 applicants every year, there's no point of having seasonal workers who can answer the phone calls. We would rather talk to the client directly, share our opinion, explain the process. Sometimes it takes us to answer a phone call, sometimes good 40 minutes to 1 hour, 1.5 hours. We would like to personally connect with everyone, explain the process, all the pros and cons, just our opinions about what we think about these countries. So that way we believe we can recruit an understanding client base about 50 to 60. Yes, it's difficult, but we've been doing it over and over again. So that is the very reason why sometimes we fail to answer calls on time. But we return every single call, especially if the caller leaves a message. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate spending your Saturday afternoon with us. And if you have any questions, uh, give us a call or send a message and we'll be in touch. Thank you all.